Hey guys, Tightrope here, and it's good news because it's patch day. This is the 1.50 one-year anniversary patch for Company Fiore's 3. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the general changes. The faction-specific balance changes will be covered in my video tomorrow. The first thing we're looking at are the new maps. Relic have made 3 maps, Semois, Elst Outskirts, and Montherme. All of these remakes of COH2 or COH1 maps. They've also added 2 comp stomping maps, so we're not really going to be having a look at those. And finally, 2 community made maps. First community made maps finally being added into the game. I think overall now the map pool is kind of solid. I think if we'd reached this point 3 months into COH3's launch, people wouldn't really be complaining about the lack of maps, but it's taken a year to get here now. And still, I think, in the team game modes, still need to be 1 or 2 more maps in each mode on top of this. And we still don't have vetoes yet. So there's still quite a long way to go in terms of maps, but finally we're starting to get to a respectable level. Starting out with the 1v1 maps, and we're having a look at Semois, also known as Semois in COH2. So the defining characteristic of this map are all the buildings throughout the middle. There are loads of garrisons in the middle of this map, so you're going to need your mortars, your flamethrowers, your breaching units if you want to be successful. One of the big differences between the older versions though are we've got these new crossings, new exits from your base essentially, so you don't get base pinned on these small avenues getting out of your base. So I think that's overall a net positive, opening up different ways to get around the map. You can see you've got a medium munitions and fuel right next to your base, very safe, can't even be cut off. So I would expect this to be reasonably high resources overall because of that, especially in the early stages of the game. Going to be like getting your light vehicles out quite fast because of that. But yeah, I do quite overall like this kind of setting, this kind of lighting scenario. I do think it looks quite nice. A nice blue lake over here, of course. Right up in the corner are these medium munitions. Yeah, looks good to me. Let's have a look at the next one. Relic have also added some community maps to the pool, and here we are on Faymonville, also known as Faymonville Approach in COH2. This one was remade by KPN and AE. So yeah, very familiar look to this one in terms of cover layout as well. A few changes here and there. Got a medium fuel, medium munitions quite close to your base, though they are spread apart. So you won't be able to like cap one, cap the other like you can on Twin Beaches. So slightly divergent capping paths early on, I would imagine. The cutoffs outside in familiar spots. The big building over here. This is actually just an amalgamation of like 6 different buildings, so you've got to be careful which side you jump into, because it's not like one big building, it's a conglomerate, so make sure you get into the right side. Got the medium fuel in the contestable positions, familiar spot. These buildings have been reduced in size and scope over here, and this one, has got some extra sight blockers on it, though as you can see, this has kind of been opened up, a few less fences and sight and shot blockers through this area. Also got a medium munitions right on the outer edge beyond the VP. So that's the big difference. Cover here around these muni points has also been reduced. There used to be a lot of heavy cover sandbags in there. So 2 cutoffs close to the bases. Let's look at Faymonville. Very familiar stuff from COH2. Having a look at Elst Outskirts, a remake of the COH2 map. And this area here will be very familiar, though slightly redesigned in different ways, of course. Have a look at the sector layout first off. You can see that initially you don't connect a fuel until you've got this cutoff here, so slightly slower early fuel might lead to slightly later light vehicles compared to some other maps where you can like come out straight away, grab at least like a +5 fuel. So it might slow things down a little bit at the start. And then we've got these medium fuel in a familiar position to kind of what they were, the high fuel points in COH2. The high munitions quite close to them as well, so high resources in this area. They will be fought over fiercely, I imagine. Having a look throughout the rest of the map, forest area, pretty familiar, but you know, slight repositioning of a lot of the cover features. This building kind of reduced in the number of windows it has compared to the Code 2 version, but this one kind of increased in size. Kind of brought a little bit closer together as well. Different theme, of course. This one got a big railway through this area onto the cutoff. A bit more of an industrial rather than a forest-looking setting compared to the Code 2 version. Quite open through this area. So yeah, you know, familiar map, pretty familiar setup, and I'm happy that another map's been added to the 2v2 pool. Here we are on Montherme. I believe this is a remake of a COH 1 map, and 3v3. You can see the defining characteristic of this map is that one player from each team kind of spawns on this lane that's separated by water and these bridges. So maybe a bit of a 1v1 type scenario on this side with indirect fire kind of flying both ways. But also on top of that, there are 2 victory points right next to each other, separated by these bridges in the middle. So I imagine this area will be very hotly contested. So you can try and control this. Remember, bridge mechanics did get changed in the last big patch, like regarding amount of health to kill them and time to repair them, stuff like that. So I imagine that's going to get a major workout in this map in particular, with these 2 bridges being so important for victory point control. So have a look around the map as well. You know, a few buildings here, quite a few of them semi-destroyed. Big church or town hall type scenario here, definitely a church. Some kind of ruins over there. Quite a lot of elevation coming up sharply from the river area. You can see that. So probably going to be a lot of elevation bonus scenarios happening throughout this map. Even like from building to building fights. I could imagine top floor here shooting at bottom floor here. Maybe there could be elevation bonuses at play. Stuff like that. So it's something to watch out for, because still the elevation bonus when firing from like upper floor windows still doesn't show. So I think a lot of players will still be unaware of that mechanic. I really hope they can address that in some fashion. Just having a general look around. A lot of like medium and low points, no like high resources anywhere. A lot of buildings. Not a lot of like super open space on this map, so I could imagine maybe anti-tank guns struggling. Close quarters units being quite strong, and you're obviously quite a lot of garrisons, so you're going to need to bring your mortars and your flamers on this map. And the final map we're taking a look at is a remake of Steps from Code 2. This one, another community map by the Sphinx. So you can see right away the main difference between the Code 2 map is the VP and fuel have kind of been swapped in positions. This used to be like a hotly contested fuel area. Now it's been moved around, and the VP's a more standardized one in kind of each corner type scenario. Still got this fuel down here with the cutoffs. It's going to be hotly contested. So we'll have a look around. Very familiar through the center, these big elevated areas, sandbags kind of on either side. Quite open, kind of like a red desert setting to this. Do you think, like, to my eyes, maybe it's a little bit bright? I know it's the desert and whatnot, but just especially where like, you're closer to the white sand areas, it's a bit retina searing. But yeah, very similar layout to the Code 2 variant. In terms of building placements, very familiar looking. I think like a very like faithful recreation of the Code 2 map in terms of like all the cover features and buildings and whatnot. Only difference being those sectors are being switched around the VP and the fuel. So yeah, cool. Another 4v4 map in the pool. I would say Taranto Coastline was probably the most hated 1v1 map up until this point, but it has received some changes in this patch. Most noticeable is to these cutoffs or strategic points. They used to cut off like all your fuel, but now they don't really cut off anything. So with all of the fuel like right in the side here, quite secure, hard to harass. I'm still not sure they've got the right formula for this map in terms of territory points and layouts and stuff, because this is going to be very hard to harass the enemy players' fuel on this map, I feel. And I feel like these cutoffs are maybe not that impactful in terms of what they do. So it still could perhaps use a bit more work. They've also changed like the elevation. Used to be like deep valleys down here and then coming up really high up here. So they've reduced a lot of the elevation throughout this area. Used to be quite hard to cap this because it was very easy to defend from like either side here. You'd always get the elevation disadvantage. So the central munitions point should be a lot more hotly contested. Also removed a few of the heavy cover walls that they had in this area as well. Opened things up a little bit. This used to be kind of like blocked off in terms of vision and used to be higher, and now it's been flattened out, opened up. So a few changes overall, I think net positive, but still I think some more work required on Taranto Coastline. The notes also mentioned they changed the contrast settings on the map of Villa Fiore, and to my eyes now looks maybe more white overall rather than kind of having a brownish hue to it. Looks kind of sharper. I think that's also assisted by the fact that the shadows are now much darker and more defined compared to being a bit more washed out in the old version. I think overall it is a visual improvement, the new Villa Fiore contrast settings. Relic also made a very important change that they didn't mention anywhere in the patch notes, and it is to do with water. That is water that you can like walk across. Now this wasn't a feature on almost any maps until this Day 101 map got introduced, so it didn't really matter too much. But yeah, water used to have the same negative cover values like it had in Code 2, but it didn't show a negative cover icon on your unit's shield. So the penalties from that were, you know, you take more damage from small arms, more likely to be hit by small arms, offer some protection against flames. That's all been completely erased. Now water has no cover whatsoever. So you're free to run around in water to your heart's content, and it's the exact same as being in open ground. So I thought that was very important to mention to the people who were in the know. Now you can cap in these circles and stuff on Day 101 without any consequences. Player profiles have also been altered this patch. This is what you get if you click on yourself up here. So you can see mainly in this region has now been changed. The badges have been redone. You can alter these. I'll show you that later on. And this kind of banner at the top has been altered. I'll put a side by side of initially when they got introduced, 1.20 versus 1.50 now. I think overall it does look quite a lot better now. And you can also customize that if you come to loadout and then go to profile. So if you're a pre-order, you can get away from using this badge now. You can select from a few others. You can change your title instead of being pioneer. You can select from a few different units there. And you can also change that banner on your profile between a couple different options here. So they say that, you know, they're still going to flesh this out further. This is like the first stage of your player profile customization, but yeah, it's definitely an improvement. They've made some improvements to the replay mode, which is nice. First off, they've added a new fog of war setting. If you come down to here, now you have reveal map all players. So at the moment you can see I've only got one player visible, but now I can see both players without revealing the fog everywhere else on the map. This is one of the functions that I requested in my feedback video about the replay mode, so I'm glad to see they added it. And I think this is a very useful tool for helping learn like sight ranges and sight details on different maps, so I'm glad they have added it. They also added another function if you come to settings, replays, and you turn this on, and then you collapse this away. This element down the bottom that's in the bottom disappears. So it opens up a bit more screen space. If you come down here, it will like reappear. So that's nice. I think overall though, you know, I would like to see this replay system redesigned. Like at the moment it's kind of passable for 1v1s, but for team games, this overlay being up here, it's just so hard to follow anything bigger than 1v1s. It's not a very good overlay overall, in my opinion, for that. And just in general, like, I'm used to, as a player, looking down the bottom here for these kind of things, right? This kind of information. Having it up here, it's just, yeah, it's no good. On top of that, yeah, I've covered it all in the video. I'm not going to say anymore. Look at that. So yeah, I'd still like to see almost a complete redesign on the replay mode. But they did also fix the bug where sometimes previously the blue player would have the red VPs. That has now been fixed, thankfully. For the pathfinding change, Relic didn't provide an example of this themselves, but I think I've captured it pretty well here. So on the left we've got a Sherman going straight forwards, and on the right going straight back. And when they get to the same spot along this line, I give them an order to go towards the Jeep. Obviously on the right hand side this is a reverse order, and you can see the different path they take to get to that point, especially in the track marks they leave behind. The forwards Sherman takes a wider path, maintaining speed, and the reversing Sherman makes a sharper turn. So I think at first glance this change does make some sense. And I will say that, you know, if I'm driving forwards, doing like maneuvering, driving S's, maintaining momentum like this, it feels quite natural to me. So that's fine. But I will say that trying to execute similar maneuvers like going in reverse now, with these tighter turns, feels like I'm constantly like losing momentum, going very slowly, very slowly, which is maybe less desirable for me coming from like a COH3 background. Yeah. It means that, you know, trying to drive away versus somebody driving at you, it's going to be quite hard to do now. If you have to make like micro adjustments as a chase is happening, like maybe something comes up behind you, you have to like switch your path because you want to avoid getting snared or dodging a mine or something like that. It feels like you're going to be at a disadvantage driving in reverse now with these changes, with these like tighter reverse changes. And maybe you'll be better served just like hitting reverse and for like quite far away and just like letting it handle itself rather than trying to micro control it like you would in COH3. Like, I feel like that was kind of like a skill testing element in COH3, doing those micro changes yourself. It allowed you to kind of like path around things more smoothly than with a natural pathing. Now it feels like they're trying to maybe automate that, take some of the agency away from the player, and overall it feels like driving in reverse is now at a bit of a disadvantage, but maybe in certain situations this will help you get out of harm's way faster driving in reverse. But overall I feel like it's maybe not that good of a change. I don't know. They made changes to vehicle acceleration. After 1.40, you know, we had that almost instant acceleration up to max speed, which I think was a pretty controversial change. Kind of looked stupid, made the game look more like Command and Conquer kind of stuff. The tanks were kind of like jerking back and forth with the instant acceleration. Yeah, I don't think it was a good change. They say they've kind of tuned it halfway between where it was previously and where it was after the 1.40 patch. So let's see how it feels now. So yeah, still you can see it's quite sharp accelerating for that first like half a second-ish. So it does feel very snappy. Let's see how it compares to like just... So that's what it looks like driving forwards and backwards. You don't benefit from it when you're going backwards and forwards like this. So there is a bit of a disconnect there between like, you know, having to drive your tank forwards and backwards and then driving from a standstill forwards or backwards. Still does feel a little bit unnatural, but not as big of a difference overall. So it's better, but I think personally I would prefer if they just removed these kind of like trickery responsive changes and just actually improved the input delay response, you know? They just knocked like 100 milliseconds off the input delay. That would kind of nullify a lot of the need for these kind of tricks, in my opinion. Oh, well, that's probably not going to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to test, kind of like what I did before. This Sherman's going to be driving in full speed. And when it gets to this line, I'm going to tactical pause, give a movement command to this one, and we'll see the difference. Before it was about 3 range difference. Let's see how it goes this time around. So they're pretty much aligned there. So this one's maybe one range ahead. Let's go.
Orders loud and clear.
Pretty similar net result. Maybe about 1 or 2 range further back, but still like pretty fast acceleration. So I feel like overall these kind of changes made it harder to catch your opponent like unawares. You know, if they were like at a dead standstill, you had a full head of steam chasing them and you're kind of like trying to outmaneuver them, they could just like get away from you so quickly, you know? So it kind of nullified some of the advantages of having like a full head of steam up as you're making an attack. Made it easier to dodge away from anti-tank and stuff like that. So I feel like it makes the game more forgiving, and in a bad way. Yeah. There's been an increase in damage to anti-infantry strafes, so we're going to be looking at the Luftwaffe one here. It does mention later on in the patch notes that the air support center one for US forces actually does more damage, so a little bit strange. I don't know what else this damage increase affects, but we'll take a look at it here. Should do 35 damage to every single model in the squad. And that's exactly what it does. So yeah, strafes in Code 3 are different to Code 2. In Code 2, it kind of used to depend on like where the damage, like how the machine gun shots were landing and where the models were spaced, how much damage they would take, and would be inconsistent. But in Code 3, everything that's in the zone is going to take that set amount of damage. So if you're retreating alongside with the damage, you don't take any more damage. It's still just the regular 35. Also, previous to this patch, I'll do a side-by-side, or maybe earlier, this one I recorded earlier, there was actually a bug with this specific strafe, the Stuka one, because when you would suppress the squad and it'll be doing damage, say this would cause the whole squad to get pinned after it damages the first model, and then the strafe could actually miss models later on because they were suppressed or pinned, and they'd have received accuracy bonuses, and then, yeah, the plane would miss. So that has been fixed now, and that makes this a lot more appealing now at 50 munitions, worth the asking price in my opinion. Relic are making some experimental changes to coolant tanks. This patch specifically, they are affecting the EZ-8 and the Panther, though I could imagine, depending on how the results of this shake out, maybe they could be adapted to some of the other battle groups in the future. So basically what they've done here is they've given you 2 options at the end of your tech tree. You can either just get it as usual, call it in with the engineer for its cost, or for 0 command points you can just unlock it and build it from your final tech structure. In this case would be the tank depot. So giving you 2 options there at the end of your tech tree. This should allow it to come in quite a lot earlier, especially in team games where command points usually accumulate slower just because the maps are larger, and especially in the early game before you get forward reinforce, forward retreat points, it's just longer to go every time you have to retreat and come back to fight and stuff. So typically command points in the early game and team games accumulate slower, so these call-ins would arrive quite a lot later, and that could mean they wouldn't have proper impact. And they wouldn't really scale between 1v1s and 4v4s. They'd be way too strong in 1v1s because saving 300 manpower, 120 fuel is just game-breakingly good, but then they'd arrive too late in team games, so then they'd be kind of useless. So they're trying to straddle the line at the moment. Personally, I would like to see just the whole tech skipping element of call-ins completely removed, locked all of them behind tech, because they were a constant trouble child throughout all of Company of Heroes 2's history. Every time, all the strategies would involve skipping tech, spamming units early on, having as strong early game as you could have, and then stalling, bring in the call and tech. And we definitely have seen quite a lot of that in Code 3 as well. And it would kind of be like we'd lock one behind tech each stage in Code 2, keep locking them behind tech, and then the next call-in would be the problem, and then the next call-in would be the problem. And it happened to basically every single call-in vehicle throughout all of Code 2's history. That's why the vast majority, almost every single one, got locked behind tech eventually. So I'd like to see this whole process short-cutted, just lock most of them behind tech. I know it can be kind of difficult to find places to lock them behind tech and can be a little bit awkward sometimes, but at least just try, you know, at least try. But that's my rant on call-ins. I'd like to see basically all of them locked behind tech. But specifically for this change, I think the Panther's probably going to be, used a bit more, especially in team games against Matildas. The extra penetration it has can be quite handy. But I don't think it's going to be like game-breakingly strong or anything. But I think the Easy 8 actually has quite a lot of potential with the Armored Battle Group. Because you can get Strength and Steel, reducing its manpower drain, buff up its rate of fire with Seek and Destroy, and then straight away Vet 1, and then War Machine to reduce its costs. So now you can get an Easy 8 for 330 manpower, which is very close to the cost of a Panzer III. So good luck at Africa Corps trying to fight a Easy 8 with your Panzer III. It's going to be extremely tough. So I could see these being quite good with this option now. The Easy 8 might see a bit of a resurgence post this call-in change. A couple other small changes I wanted to mention. I believe they've updated a few more icons. Here you can see the 4x4. It's kind of like a man standing on the back of a 4x4. So I think they've updated this. I don't think it was mentioned anywhere in the notes. So that's kind of cool. On top of that, they did mention this one in the notes, the demo charge, such as what you can build with commandos. Used to be an ugly, like, detonate and disgusting font. On the tactical map now, it looks kind of like how it does natively. So that's a nice change. Still debatable about whether it should be on the tactical map at all, but at least it doesn't look like a complete eyesore anymore. I wanted to see how... Okay, so it does seem like the area you can click is outside of the kind of jagged box and stuff on it. So be careful, guys, be careful. The exact click box does not align with the what it visually appears to be. It goes a little bit beyond that, so be careful because you don't want to destroy your own squads like I've done many a time. As always, a huge thank you goes out to my Patreon backers, and if you enjoy these videos, I hope you consider coming on board.